This isn't gonna work well.
It's fun.
In this video, we're gonna take a look at the construction of my new Benchwork. We're gonna install some turnouts and some track. We're gonna install some Cobalt switch motors, program them, and then we're gonna run a train up in here. If you like what you see by the time we're done, make sure and subscribe, and welcome to It's My Railroad. Okay, so to get started, let's talk about this. Yep, that's my finger. This is what happens when you're in a really big hurry and you're using a circular saw. You see where this is going? Yep, I was holding a piece of wood and cutting it, a 1x3, just like I've done hundreds of times, without problem, without issue. And the saw bit me and I lost a great deal of the end of that finger. It wasn't pretty. You know, a skill saw spins and then it hits human flesh and okay, you get the picture. If you want to see the picture, by the way, I shared some photos of the injury with the channel members here at It's My Railroad. So if you want to see that, just go over to the channel page, click join, go through the whole process, and then you too can see what this looks like. Some people are asking me, does it hurt? And I'm like, you know, it doesn't hurt near as bad as it smells. I don't know why. Even the doctor said, oh, that's perfectly natural. It stinks. When I'm driving and I'm holding my steering wheel and the air is blowing, sometimes it's like, whoa, I gotta move my hand out of it. Anyway, there's that. So you're gonna see this special guest in the next few videos, probably while it continues to heal. But what I wanna do right now is take you through quickly what I did to build the Benchwork for our expansion. Okay, so let's take a look at the Benchwork. Now, the thing is, I built all this Benchwork over a few evenings and over last weekend, but I did not shoot any of that for video because I don't think you guys want to spend a lot of time watching me just cut and screw a bunch of wood. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? But there is a link above my head and one in the description to a playlist where I've gone through varying techniques of installing Benchwork. So if you're really interested, you can go see that, but wait till this video is over, if you will. I'm using open Benchwork here, which means I got a whole bunch of pieces of wood, like a skeleton frame that I built so that I could then put risers in and change their elevations and whatnot to achieve the grade I was looking for. Now here's something I discovered when I was doing this expansion, and that is this bottom transition deck and this top transition deck. The top one has to go vertically 2 inches further from the back of the railroad there to over there than this one does. So this one's got a 2% grade pretty much the whole way. It's easy, boom, done. This top one was very tricky. I would get the grade right at one point, and then at another point, it was like a 4% grade again. So I spent the longest amount of time with clamps, clamping these standoffs, these risers, and putting a level on there until I got it where it's pretty close to a 3% grade. It cheats up above it a little bit. Mostly it's below it. I think overall, my trains are gonna have a much better time with it. Now, even though I didn't shoot any of that for video, what I wanna do is take you on a very quick tour of how this is constructed, and then we'll get down to putting in some track and turnouts. To begin with, I took some 1x3s and I screwed them to the studs of the hobby room wall, kind of cantilevered them out, and then put legs in every 5 feet to support it, and it came out pretty good. Once that piece of the construction was done, then I basically did the same thing. I cantilevered some 1x3s, again, off the hobby room wall, brought them out, but then I used the bottom deck as the framework to support posts that hold up the top deck. Then basically for this transition deck, I just cantilevered pieces of wood off that framework and slowly adjusted the grade until I got it to basically it's sitting right at 3%. Now it gets a little above 3.1, 3.2, and it gets a little below 2.8, 2.9. This one right through here originally had like a 4, 5, 6% grade. Who does that? I do, apparently. Overall, this is a very sturdy construction, way more sturdy than what I got on the other side. Matter of fact, if I ever build another model railroad, this is what I'll do not that. Now, let me take you down to the side over here and show you something cool I did. So what you're looking at right here is where the tracks come out from the top deck and begin heading down and actually into the new yard. Now, the significant thing I want to show you here is I've got 3 different levels here of the plywood, and here's the reason why. This track here is my uphill track, and so I want the maximum travel time to head down there. So it pretty much immediately heads into a grade. But this one here, which is my downhill track, comes right off this turnout. And the thing is, if you've done work with turnouts, you know you don't want to put a grade right off a turnout because it'll warp the turnout and junk like that. And who needs that? So I've got this pretty much flat out to about here, and then it starts the grade. It's a sharper grade, a more severe grade, but we're going downhill. So who really cares? And then of course I got this flat coming straight out down into the yard. Okay, so let's move on to track and turnouts. You may have seen in some of the previous shots, I already laid a whole bunch of track, which I did on my own, and it was really a lot of fun. I did with some music playing, having a couple of beers. Hobbying at its best. But I saved the best for last. I saved the best for you, and that is this. I've got this section of turnouts right here that are integral to the operations of the railroad. First of all, this turnout right here is the one where we diverge from the main line and head down on a separate path to Switch Junction on the other side of the railroad. And that's all fine and dandy. Problem is, when we come back up from Switch Junction, we're gonna be on the wrong side of the railroad. I run right-handed traffic. All the trains travel on the right lane on my double track main. So when it comes back up, it's on the wrong side of the railroad. So what I need is this crossover right here. So now we've got 2 turnouts we're gonna put in there to cross over to the correct side of the railroad. I'm also adding a new feature, and that is this turnout. That turnout right there is going to be a place where I can pull trains off the railroad, send them back behind the benchwork on some storage tracks, and on the other end, they'll just be able to exit right onto the railroad. They don't have to back up or do any junk like that. So down here, we've got storage. Up here, we've got staging. It's a modified plan. It's me on the fly, doing what I'm gonna do, and I'm down with it. So what I wanna do here with you folks right now is let's go through and build this turnout complex, I guess, and then let's run some track to it and see how that goes. Okay, so let's get to work on the turnouts. Now, I use Pico Code 80 turnouts, and I like them because they got this little spring mechanism here, which allows it to just snap back and forth. The problem is I'm gonna put switch motors on here for reasons I'll talk about later. And we've got this little spring right here that we've got to get rid of. Now, I'll try to do this without blocking the view, but to get rid of it, you basically pry it out gently so you don't screw up the throw rod. Like that. And now when you move this back and forth, it just sort of moves. And the reason you have to do that is because the switch motor does not have enough huevos to move that across that spring. So I've already done that on the others. That's how I did on this one. And now let's put these things together. So let's start out by determining where the main line is going to go. And I think what I want to do is I want to come out from the back of this at 3 inches to the center line of one of the tracks. I make a mark there, and then 1.25 inches to the center line of the second track. We'll go through and duplicate that over here, 3 inches, and then another 1.25 inches. And between these 4 spots, we're gonna draw some straight lines down there to determine where the main line is gonna go. Then after that, we can just line up a straight edge, in this case, my 3-foot level, right on those marks, and then draw a line where the main line is gonna go. And move to the front one and do the same thing. All right, so that tells us where the main line tracks are gonna be centered. So let's put the turnouts in and see how that looks. So I'm gonna put this first one here, centered on that line. and leaving enough distance here and there to be able to make a turn here to get between the benchwork and get behind the railroad. We'll get to that later. And then we take our crossover tracks or turnouts, lay them in there. And then this one here is gonna latch onto that one and go right there. So what we need to do now is I'm gonna solder those two pieces together. We're gonna make a little piece of track between here and solder it on. Then we're gonna take this one to this one and solder it on and basically make one set of turnouts that's all soldered together. Then the rest is just joining up with the track. So I've already got rail joiners on this turnout right here. So what I'm gonna do is just pretty much join these two turnouts together like that and just push them together. Now the good news is the length of these rails and those rails is consistent because it comes from the manufacturer that way. So as long as I butt those right up against each other, I know that it's straight going right through. Then we're gonna go through and solder these down. And just heat up with the soldering iron and then introduce the solder. There's one side. Well, I'm calling an audible right now, and that is this. Back in the day, I bought a bunch of these little Atlas shorty pieces of track, even though I run Pico track right now. But this piece is like the perfect size to make that crossover work. Amazing sauce right there. So what I think I'll do instead of cutting a little piece of track and trying to make it work, I'm just gonna use this. Now, if it was a prototype look you're after, these D's right here that you see in the track, you'd want to get rid of those. But down here on the bottom transition deck, not worried about prototype, just gotta get the job done. So I'm gonna get some rail joiners and put some here, here, here. Matter of fact, heck, let's put rail joiners on all the turnouts, finish soldering this, and then let's lay some track. Well, I got all those turnouts soldered together, and quite frankly, it lines up pretty good. The next thing I want to do though, before we start putting the track in, is to make some slots in the plywood sub road bed for the switch rods, because I'm going to use Cobalt switch motors underneath here. Now, here's why I'm using switch motors. Someday in the future, we're gonna have some computer automation where I can set a train, let's say back here, and tell it to put it into service, and then when it's ready and the tracks are cleared, it'll do it automatically. But I've been saying that for like 3 years, and I haven't automated, but we're still allowing for it. So before we put this track in up here, let's get out the drill and a bit, and let's mark out and drill where the throw rods are gonna go to move the throw rods. To begin with, what I'll do is make sure I got the turnout structure where I want it, and go through and mark a location where the throw rod is on the turnouts. Like that. See, it's quick and easy, and there's plenty of room there for it to transition. Let's make a couple more. Okay, so with the holes drilled, we'll bring the turnouts back up, line them up, and we can see we've got plenty of room for those throw rods to throw the throw rods. So to get started on laying the track, I've got a brand new piece, boom, of Pico Flex track here. Now, I've been reusing stuff I took off the layout for straight sections and stuff, but in the turns, I feel like using the new stuff just to make sure, I don't know, everything's good. I'm just making this up as I'm going along. So if I was to put this in here right now and then bend it around the turn, we see that over here, we're kind of coming up short right there, right? We need an extra, I don't know, let's say 12 inches there. So what I want to do before I put this together is make this piece of flex track 12 inches longer. To do that, I'm going to take an old piece of track that's about 1 foot long and solder it on the end and make one long piece of flex track. Then we'll solder it to that end and glue it in around to here and hook it onto that, and boom, I think we'll have a good radius. Let's give that a shot. Okay, I went through and elongated my track, and now to get me a nice good turn here, we're going to just go ahead and plug it into the existing. Like that. Now, maybe you can see here, there's a gap here, there's not a gap there. What I'm gonna do is solder that piece in and then pull that piece into position. We'll make up for that at the other end. So grabbing the soldering iron and the solder, we'll just solder that together. And it's really tough because it's in a tight spot. Pull it and wiggle it a little bit. All right, it's getting close. So I got that piece of track on there. Now it's time to solder it in place. And while the solder is still wet, straighten that track out and then just let it set up. All right, so I've got the track down here and kind of lined up where I think we want it, leaving enough straight down on this side, and then I'm bringing the turnout in to line that first one up pretty good. Now using the rail nippers, we'll go back and cut this right where we think we want it. And then just to double check, we'll bring that piece up here. Let me get rid of that railroad tie, put some rail joiners in there, and put the rest of this track in, and then we'll move on to switch motors. Well, there you go. I've got the track connected to the turnouts. All the turnouts are in place. I went through and dropped some feeders and made up my DCC. All the wiring is made up downstairs for now. If you want to see how I do that sort of thing, I've got a link, again, above my head, I think over there, and in the description. We can go watch some videos for that, but that's not the purpose of this segment of this video. The purpose is this. We want to put some switch motors in here. Now, I told you before that someday we're going to automate this, and the switch motors are going to be switched by a computer, but for now, I'm just making a provision for it. To do that, I'm going to use this. This is a Cobalt switch motor, and here's the thing I love about the Cobalts. They're IP, you just connect them right to your DCC bus, and then they're IP addressable. You just program them on the fly. You don't need any other piece of equipment. You can select them from your throttle or however you do it, and switch them back and forth. Now, I scabbed these from the old layout because they're like 20 bucks a piece, and I don't feel like buying any new ones, right? So first thing I want to do is I want to clean off this old construction adhesive, just make it flat, and then I'll show you how I'm going to install them under the layout. So I'll show you this as best I can. I've got my hobby saw right here, and you can see there's some wood and construction adhesive still on this. Now, frankly, I could go ahead and set this just like that. Boom, Bob's your uncle. Problem is that switch rod is, throw rod is gonna be way too short. So what we need to do is very gently take our saw up against the plastic and just start sawing along, trying not to cut our finger off, and get it as clean as we can. Now, I've learned I don't have to get this exactly right. I got to get it very close though, and Bob's your uncle. I'm trying to be gentle with this so I don't bend the switch rod or break anything off that we're going to need later. As you can see, it's coming off pretty good. Just takes a little time. And there you go. That's close enough for what we're doing anyway. So I'm going to go through and get the other three this clean and then I'll show you how I install them. Well, there you go. I got most of the old construction adhesive off of there. Now I don't have to get it all off of there. I'm gonna just put more on, and the way you put it up on there and squish it on there, it'll be just fine. Couple things to point out though before we install this. One is these Cobalt IP switch motors come with this throw rod, connecting rod, in the centered position. In other words, if you install it and your switch points are right in the center of your turnout, then later on when you disable the centering portion of it, perfect left, perfect right. Awesome sauce. One of the things I love about them. Thing is, I'm reusing these. And they're already set to one side or the other. I do not feel like putting them into the DCC and enabling the centering function just to do this. I'm gonna get this done just fine without it. So, but if you buy these from the factory, understand they come centered, and it's a great little feature. Second thing is, it comes with these screw slots where you can set it in there and mark it out and run some screws and all that. And that doesn't work for me, baby, because it's too much work. I gotta figure out how to get the screw in there. I gotta screw it in, and what if it's not right? What if it's off a little bit? That's way too much work. I have too many things to do. I don't have time for this. So instead, what we're gonna use is, boom, Gorilla Construction Adhesive. Now, if you guys have been watching this channel, you know I love this stuff. I use it to glue down my cork road bed. I use it to glue down my track. I use it to flatten my mohawk. I mean, I use this for all kinds of stuff. It's awesome sauce. What we're gonna do is we're gonna squirt some on there. I'm not even gonna worry about leveling it out. I'm just gonna squirt some on there, line up the pin with the turnout and adjust it like a little bit, and then let go of it, and boom, it's done. It's very easy to do. So first thing we'll do is I'm going to go ahead and do that for one of them and show you from the top how it aligns, and then I think I might reposition the camera and show you the second one from underneath so you can see how that works. Okay, so I've got the first switch motor here, and you can see it's set to that position, that side over there. So when I put this in here, what I want to make sure and do is put this first turnout in that position. So first thing we'll do after that is we'll put some construction adhesive on here, like that. And again, I don't need to make this pretty. It is what it is. And then put it under the layout. Now this takes some time. I've already cut these metal rods. There, I have it in place. I just need to move the switch motor around and make sure it's set the correct way. Like that, then I can just let go of it. And look at that, boom, it's installed. So let's see how this undershot works. Put it through the hole. Line it up with the hole in the throw rod above. I can see which way this is thrown. It's thrown to the, well, on off position. So I'll just move this around until it's off, rotate it to where I want it, make sure everything's good above. No tension on the switch rod, or the throw rod, or that little metal wire, whatever you call it. And then, let's go. Well, okay, I've got 3 of the 4 switch motors installed, and it turns out on this turnout and this turnout, the rod, the throw rod, whatever it is, actuator rod, wasn't long enough. So I had a couple of spares that were longer. I put them in, yada yada, cut them off with my Dremel, when all of a sudden, I f***ed up this turnout right here. Look at this thing, look at the switch points are just moving around at random because there's no throw rod left, because some kind of way I killed the turnout. Now, does that ever happen to you? You do everything right, and then all of a sudden, boom, you get bit, even though you're doing everything right. Can you sense the frustration right now? Right now, there's a dog moaning in my neighbor's yard right now. I think he's experiencing my pain. Well, what I gotta do now is replace that turnout. And the thing is, I don't have any number 8 turnout, which is what this is. All I've got is number 6 turnouts. Well, the good news is only switchers are going to head down this track, so I can put a number 6. So what I got to go through and do is cut this one out, put it in number 6, put the switch motor in, make sure I don't screw it up again, and then we'll get down to wiring these and programming. Let me introduce you to this. Boom. This is Cat 6 Ethernet cable. And here's the deal. My wife is in the IT world. She's a manufacturer's rep. And at one point, I sabotaged a whole box of her Ethernet cable. And here's why. Let me show you something. I'm going to take my strippers and I'm going to score this outer sheathing, right? And then I'm going to do this. What it does is it breaks that outer covering, and what you're left with are these color-coded, look at that, 4 pairs, color-coded wires. Now, I've used these for block detectors, I've used them for switch motors here and there, and from DCC stuff, DC stuff, whatever. It's really cool to have a whole cable that sends a lot of strands somewhere, but in this case, we're going to use these as jumpers. So, you get this going, and then I'll take a little bit more off. Again, you just score the outer lining and then snap it back and forth, and it breaks apart. You pull it off, and you got some jumpers. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these and go from my DCC bus right into the switch motors. First thing I'm going to do is strip the feeder wires. Like that. No, I'm not going to remotely attempt to show you how these go in because it's so tight in there you can't really see it, but I've got my 2 feeder wires here and we're just going to plug them right in to where it says DCC in on the switch motor. Like that. And you know what the thing is? It doesn't matter if you use the left one or the right one, it just goes right in because when it gets to the DCC bus, it doesn't care. So I connected the rest of the switch motors to the DCC bus, and I've got my DCC turned on right now. And so now it's time to program these. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make this first turnout that goes to switch junction, I'm gonna assign it address number 10. And then I've got a turnout back here where it goes off to my storage tracks, and I'm gonna set that at number 11, and I'm gonna reserve 12 and 13 for the crossover, but we're gonna do something special when we get to the crossover. First of all, let me show you how easy it is to program one of these turnouts. First thing is, there's a switch on there that's either in the run or the set position. Let's put that into the set position. Just that easy, put it in set. Then, using my DCC cab, my throttle, if you will, I'm gonna select accessory because I want a turnout, and I'm gonna select number 10 and press enter, and then press on. I'm using an NCE, it's on or off is what it is. To make sure it held, you do it twice, and on. Just like that. Then you switch it back to the run position. Let's select it and see what happens. Boom, it works just fine. Now on a DCC cab, like I said, you get on or off on an accessory. To help keep track of things, I use on to be straight through, I use off to be the diverging rail. And right now, this one just did it backwards. When I went off, it went straight through, and on means it's gonna go on the diverging side. So there's also a change we can make there. Again, we put the switch motor into the set position, like that. And then we program accessory 197, enter, and then on. Just to make sure it held, we do it again. Select accessory 197, enter, and on. Then we put it back into run, and let's see what happens. I'm going to select accessory number 10, and I want it to go into the off position. And it moves over to the diverging track. Let's go to the on position. And it goes to straight through. Amazing stuff. And see how easy it is? Just using your cab and a switch, you can program this to whatever you want. I'm gonna go through and program this one to number 11 off camera. And then we'll come up here and I'll show you what I'm gonna do for these two turnouts. So for the crossover, what I did is I reserved addresses 12 and 13, but I programmed both of these to address number 13. Pretty awesome, huh? That way I can just go select accessory 13 and on, and both of them flip at the same time. One command, two switch motors. So I've got those in the on position. I've got these two in the on position straight through. Now what I want to do is clean up this track and see how the trains operate on it. Well, with all those turnouts laid, the switch motors installed and programmed, 2 of my 3 original goals have been accomplished. 1 was to have a lot of fun with an expansion, did that. 2 was to fix the grades so that I don't need 3 locomotives to pull up my container train. So what we're gonna do right now is see if we satisfied goal number 2, because we sure as heck satisfied goal number 1. So I've got my cab here, train's on the other side of the railroad at Port Smith. Let's just spend some time pulling it out of Port Smith, running it up the grades, and see how well we do. Well, as expected, no problem coming up the bottom transition deck because, like I said, it's only like a 2% grade. Easy enough. The true test is going to come when we get to the top transition deck. Let's see how that goes. Well, there you go. The train disappears onto the other side of the layout. Amazing sauce. Had no problem coming up the new grade with just 2 locomotives. First time that's happened since I built this layout. So I would call goal number 2 satisfied. Thank you very much. Goal number 3 will be in a future video when we work on this yard up here. But thank you for joining me today on It's My Railroad. I had a blast working on this project. Hope you enjoyed watching the video. Until I see you next time. My name is Steve Brown, and rail on, my friends.